We all know the story of the Titanic, right? I mean, it's legendary. The unsinkable ship, the giant iceberg, the tragic ending. It's a story we feel like we know inside and out. But what if I told you the iceberg wasn't the real villain of the story? What if it was just the final, fatal blow in a much longer chain of hidden failures? Well, tonight, we're going to dig into the evidence, and I think you'll be surprised at what we find.
Because yeah, the Titanic hit an iceberg. That part is true. But is that really the whole story? When you start looking at the forensics, the science, even the weird weather patterns from that night, a much crazier, more complex picture starts to emerge. The real question isn't just what sank the ship, but why it sank so fast. And the biggest question of all, could it all have been avoided? Okay, so first things first, let's just shatter the biggest myth right out of the gate. You've seen it in the movies, right? A massive 300-foot gash ripping the ship open like a tin can? Well, that never happened. Forensic analysis of the wreck shows the real damage was actually a bunch of smaller holes and popped seams. And that tells us something huge. This wasn't about one catastrophic hit. This was about the ship itself falling apart.
And that leads us right to our first stop. We got to look at the very stuff the Titanic was made of. I mean, was this supposedly unsinkable ship actually flawed from the moment it was built?
Just look at this. This is an actual piece of the Titanic's hull, pulled up from 2.5 miles down. And this mangled steel tells a huge part of the story. See, modern steel would bend or tear. This shattered. It broke apart like a piece of glass.
So what's going on there? It's a bit of science called the ductile-to-brittle transition. All steel has a point where, if it gets cold enough, it stops being strong and flexible and just gets brittle. The huge problem for the Titanic was that its steel hit that point at a pretty mild temperature. So in the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, that hull had almost no strength to resist the impact. And this chart just makes it so clear. On the left, that's modern steel. Still super tough even when it's freezing. On the right, that's the Titanic steel. It's not even close. They used the wrong material for a ship sailing in icy waters. Simple as that. But the steel plates? They were only half the problem.
So what holds all those steel plates together? Rivets. 3 million rivets. And according to the top scientist at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the failure of these tiny little things may have been the real smoking gun.
When you put these rivets under a microscope, you see this. All those dark, streaky bits, that's called slag. It's basically a gunk, a waste product, that makes the metal weak. And the Titanic's rivets were full of it. So when the iceberg scraped along the side, the heads of these weak rivets probably just popped right off, and the seams of the ship just opened up to the ocean.
So, okay, we have brittle steel and we have weak rivets. The ship was already in trouble, but that's just the beginning. Now let's talk about the very specific, very strange conditions of that particular night, because that's what turned a bad situation into an absolute catastrophe.
Take a really close look at this picture. It was taken before the Titanic even set sail. You see that long, dark mark on the hull? For about 100 years, everyone just dismissed it as a shadow. But some researchers now argue it's proof of a terrifying secret, a fire, deep inside one of the giant coal bunkers that had been burning out of control for weeks.
And here's the theory. This fire, raging inside a coal bunker as tall as a 3-story building, was heating the hull to extreme temperatures. This could have made the steel up to 75% weaker than it already was. And then, in the worst coincidence imaginable, this fire-damaged, weakened part of the ship is the exact spot where the iceberg hit. The ship was already wounded before it ever saw the ice.
A fire-damaged hull is bad enough. But that night, there was something even weirder going on. Something invisible was happening in the air itself. Something that made it literally impossible to see the danger that was right in front of them.
Historians have found really compelling evidence that a rare optical illusion was happening that night. It's called a thermal inversion. You had a layer of freezing cold air sitting right under a layer of warmer air, and that boundary, it bends light. It created a mirage, a false horizon. The dark iceberg was perfectly hidden in the hazy gap between the real horizon and the fake one, making it invisible to the lookouts until it was far, far too late.
And this is the most tragic part. That same mirage almost certainly doomed any chance of a quick rescue. The crew of a nearby ship, the SS Californian, saw the Titanic, but the mirage distorted the view, making it look like a tiny ship far away.
They saw the distress rockets, but the bent light made them look like small fireworks. They had no idea they were watching a disaster happen just a few miles from them.
Bad materials, a secret fire, a bizarre mirage. It's a lot, I know. But there's one last theory we have to cover. And this is the most radical of them all. This theory says the sinking of the Titanic wasn't an accident at all. It was deliberate.
This is the famous ship swap theory. The story goes like this. The Titanic had an older sister ship, the Olympic, which was nearly identical but had been badly damaged. So the owners, wanting to pull off a massive insurance fraud, secretly swapped the two ships. They sent the damaged Olympic out to sea, disguised as the brand new Titanic, and planned to sink it on purpose to collect a huge insurance payout.
It's a great story for a movie, but the facts just don't back it up. First off, the Titanic was seriously underinsured. Sinking it was a massive financial loss for the company, not a win. Second, while they looked alike, there were major differences in their designs, things like enclosed decks that would have been impossible to switch without anyone noticing. But honestly, the single biggest piece of evidence that sinks this whole conspiracy theory for good comes down to just one number.
The shipyard, Harland and Wolff, stamped a unique construction number on every major part of their ships. The Olympic's number was 400. The Titanic's number was 401. And you know what number is stamped on every single piece of wreckage they've ever pulled up from the bottom of the ocean? 401. So yeah, case closed.
So, if it wasn't a conspiracy, then what was it? Well, the truth is actually a lot more complex, and in a way, a lot more terrifying. It wasn't one thing. It was a perfect storm, a complete cascade of failures.
Seriously, just think about it all at once. You have steel that shatters in the cold, held together by shoddy rivets. You've got a secret fire cooking the hull from the inside out. The captain is going way too fast through an area he knows is packed with ice. Then, a freak optical illusion makes the ice invisible. And, to top it all off, the one guy who had the key to the locker with the lookout's binoculars forgot it on shore. I mean, every single one of those things played a crucial part.
And that leaves us with this one last haunting question. Was the sinking of the Titanic just a horrible, unavoidable accident? A freak act of nature that no one could have predicted? Or was it the predictable result of a whole chain of human mistakes, shortcuts, and just plain arrogance? A chain of failures where, if you had fixed just one of those broken links, history could have been completely different.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.